Well, the state of our union is frankly a little weird. Hi, this is Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, we are now 24 to 48 hours after the president's third State of the Union address before a joint session of Congress and various cabinet officers and Supreme Court justices. And in some ways, it was a classic Trump teleprompter speech. And by that, I mean that he stuck to the script and stayed on message and delivered a very well-written speech. And in other ways, it was just a strange event. He rebuffed Nancy Pelosi's offer of a handshake at the beginning. Nancy Pelosi ripped up a copy of his speech very publicly at the end in several sections. During the course of the speech, Nancy was seen behind him. House Speaker Pelosi was seen behind him making various faces and seeming to be preoccupied with staring very closely at her notes in front of her and riffling through pages. It was just kind of a weird presentation. But Bill, I want to take some aspects of this speech because we're now a little while out and we've had some time for reflection upon it. Some aspects of this speech that I think deserve attention. Number one, President Trump spent a great deal of time, as most presidents do, dwelling on his accomplishments. And I'll be honest with you, I watched some CNN coverage and I read some Washington Post fact-checking. And what struck me about it, Bill, was that the fact-checkers, while they were trying to debunk what the president has said, basically indicated that he was somewhat of a stretcher, but the economy's doing pretty well. And so they couldn't really, they might say, well, there was that time in 1957 when this indicator of the economy was better than it is now. So it's really not a historic low. But over and over, the fact checkers seem to reinforce the idea that most Americans see, which is that things are going well for the economy. Do you think they're wasting their time on that fact checking, or do you think that has an audience somewhere?
Oh, God, I hope they're not wasting their time on it. The beautiful thing about that is that Donald Trump can talk about the best economy probably since World War II, or at least the 50s anyway, except there was a 2-week period there when in 1957, when the thing. So he's actually a liar. But not only do you get the benefit of hearing about how great the economy is, you also get the benefit of seeing just how painfully contorted the so-called purveyors of factual information are, trying to prove that what is true is not true.
Well, and let me just be clear about this, Bill, because in a sense, the fact checkers are correct. Like the president was making some claims of a historical nature, and that's where he really ran afoul of the facts. He would make these, broad sweeping claims, but in the course of debunking that claim, the fact checkers seem to be reinforcing the basic premise, which is the economy's going pretty well.
Which is exactly how all of the left has operated always. The left is the politics of the exception. In other words, if you try to say that there's a rule and in 99 or 999 cases out of 1,000 this happens, the left will trot out the one case where it doesn't and therefore claim that this is why we have to do it this way. At this point, I don't care. I think it was a magnificent speech, and furthermore, I think every single person who saw it either had to eat the crow of knowing that this guy was going to come out of this impeachment thing stronger than he went in, and that the facts that he was actually laying out were in fact true in every real sensible meaning of the word true. They were actually true statements. To think the economy's never been better for minority people, and on and on and on and on and on. And furthermore, I don't think I would want to shake hands with a person who just basically jumped through incredible hoops in order to assassinate my character, and who is now going to get her comeuppance. And if she wants to tear the paper up on camera, that's fine. That's even better. I don't see how it could have gone better for Donald Trump last night. I don't see how it could have gone worse for the Democrats. They're sitting still. I was in a game forum and somebody said, these places are not known for their in-depth political commentary. And somebody was just saying, it seemed kind of strange that Democrats wouldn't even applaud when Trump was talking about wiping out the opioid epidemic. Yeah, that's right.
Let's touch briefly upon
This
something
was his-
you just touched briefly upon, because the president
Sure.
only touched briefly upon it. He never used the word impeachment in the course of the speech. He seemed, of course, unaffected by Nancy Pelosi's facial distortions behind him because he couldn't see her. But this was interesting. The only reference that I heard to the impeachment was basically, it was kind of a riff on Franklin Roosevelt's speech where he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And President Trump basically said the only thing that can really hinder our growth and prosperity as an American nation is ridiculous partisan investigations. And
Good
that
for
was
him.
it. Do you think he made a smart move to barely make reference to the fact that he's being impeached and literally, as he made that speech, the next day would be the vote on to convict or acquit?
Yeah, I think it was absolutely brilliant. And the two main reasons it was brilliant was I think he gave it the amount of time and the amount of weighty consideration that it deserved, which is none. And we got to watch Nancy Pelosi making faces and you know, this kind of thing. This is what you see in fourth grade, and tearing up the speech was just priceless to me. Priceless. It's great to actually see the temper tantrum in action rather than the legislative consequences of the temper tantrum. And the speech had, I'm not going to try and get ahead of your questions.
Thank you.
But there was so much about it that was just so moving and so magnificent. Some people said it was Reagan-esque, and other people said it may have been better than that. But nevertheless, Donald Trump is, put all your personal feelings aside. I thought it was a great speech, but let's just look at it from the raw politics of it. You have a president who's going into an election with a very strong economy, coming off of two terms of the previous president with a very weak economy. His numbers are better than Barack Obama's were at this point in Obama's 2012 term.
Meaning popularity numbers.
Yep. And his economic numbers are incomparably better. And on top of this, you have the debacle in Iowa, which is clearly on everybody's minds, and the knowledge that sometime today, almost certainly today, as we record this Wednesday, the president will be fully acquitted of these ridiculous charges against him, and he will emerge more powerful from this. And this is something I had not actually considered before, that he would emerge more powerful, let me rephrase that the presidency would emerge more powerful. And I find that a slightly bit disturbing, to be perfectly honest with you. But in this particular case, I find it also extremely gratifying and yet another example of the structure of our government somehow, miraculously through its design, finding a way to punish those people that decide to abuse it in order to obtain their short-term political power cravings.
It's hard to imagine somebody with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's years of experience and political savvy doing what she did behind him unconsciously, that she was just being involuntarily petulant and she didn't know what her face was doing and how that was playing on TV. It seemed to me that had to be a conscious effort. I guess I would ask, Bill, is it on the fence independents or hardcore Democrats or moderate Republicans that's going to play well with?
It's quadrupling down on a pair of twos, Scott. You know, it's pushing all of your chips onto the table, and you're holding a pair of twos. She has to do that now. Once she made the decision, and it was her decision, to go through with this impeachment thing, that locked her into a number of different, that locked her out of a number of different options and locked her into essentially the tearing up of the president's speech and making faces behind his back. Soon she'll be sticking her tongue out, as I mentioned earlier. And then at one of the speeches where she's being interviewed, she's going to go down on the floor and start kicking and screaming like any other petulant 4-year-old that doesn't get their way. She had a choice to make as the leader of the House majority, and she decided to go down this route in order to pacify her rabid base, but mostly understanding that, look, what Nancy Pelosi has done is she threw an 80-yard long bomb Hail Mary into the end zone. It was picked off and run back for a touchdown. That's what happened. She has no candidates, and she knows it. The results from New Hampshire, which I'm sure we will receive at some point in the historical record.
You mean Iowa?
We won't. I keep saying New Hampshire. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Scott.
We've already moved on to New Hampshire.
The results from Iowa will come in. We probably won't live to see the day, but they'll eventually be revealed. And what they're finding, I think, and whether or not this is, in fact, an actual genuine conspiracy, because I wouldn't put it past them on this level of conspiracy, to if they shockingly realize that it was Buttigieg or Bernie by something crazy, I wouldn't be surprised if they leaked this information out slowly. But whatever the cause may be, the person who certainly seems to be suffering from this is Joe Biden, who by all accounts had a very weak turnout in Iowa. And this is where the Democrats have put all their chips. They're now in a situation where they're finding that although they tried their very best to suppress Bernie last time, Bernie's numbers will not be suppressed. Number one, because Joe Biden doesn't have the ruthlessness or the intellect to destroy Bernie behind the curtain the way that Hillary Clinton did, and secondly, because Joe Biden is such a miserable candidate, and I don't know. I just am giddy at this week, and I'll feel even better when the president is acquitted of these charges, and then the entire gambit, because that's what it was. It was a gambit. It was a ploy, and it was a desperate one. Then the entire gambit will be over. They'll move on to something else. I don't for a second think they're going to say, well, I guess that's it. They will dig up something else. Don't you worry. And the American people will continue to see that they'll see what they saw last night, that the economy is in incredible shape. America is, in fact, much greater than it was 4 years ago. It has recovered enormous amounts of economic growth, prestige, military strength, all of the things that Donald Trump promised. And he did all of this in the face of a news media that is constantly trying to say, well, the president should have actually said, he should have said as rather than like. Okay, fine. All right, we get it. We know who we're at war with. We know what the battle lines are, and we know that they'll do anything. And so for him to sail out of this with this speech, which was soaring in places, for him to do that, and to have it be bookended by a catastrophe for the Democrats in Iowa and a catastrophe for the Democrats in an impeachment proceeding that is going to end so anticlimactically that it's going to make season 8 of Game of Thrones look like Citizen Kane. It's just going to be a pathetic whimpering end to a pathetic whimpering attempt to overturn the will of the American people. And I have felt, and now I feel much more strongly, that they are going to pay for this in historical fashion in November.
Yeah, recent presidents have brought average American citizens into the gallery of the House so that they could highlight aspects of their policy by putting a human face on it. And President Trump was no exception. Again, during this year's State of the Union speech, he memorably brought in 2 people who had been released from prison thanks to bipartisan justice reform measures that he championed and that managed to get enough bipartisan support to get through the House and Senate. And so that was an inspiring and emotional moment. He reunited a soldier who had been stationed in Afghanistan for the past 7 months and surprised his wife and children right there in the balcony as he appeared unexpectedly to greet them and to be welcomed home. But probably most extraordinarily, Bill, he had First Lady Melania Trump present the Presidential Medal of Freedom to talk radio legend Rush Limbaugh, who was sitting right next to the First Lady for the speech. It appeared to be, much to his shock, even though earlier in the day it was announced that President Trump intended to do that sometime in the coming months. Clearly, he had other plans. Bill, what did you think specifically of that moment? Do you think that was a little too firmly partisan in a speech that should be to all of America, or do you think otherwise?
after being assassinated by this Democratic Party witch hunt, this ongoing allegations of Russian collusion, Ukrainian collusion, abuse of power, all of these unsubstantiated charges for his entire presidency. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is supposed to show some kind of hand across the aisle kind of thing. No, he rubbed their noses in it, and I'm damn glad he did too. First of all, Donald Trump certainly had the right to do that. He had the emotional right to do it, and he had the political right to do it. Secondly, Rush Limbaugh is a person of such monumental importance, as we discussed a couple of episodes ago, to the history of this country, to saving the core values of this country, that it was especially satisfying to me that this didn't happen in some ceremony that could be tidily ignored or edited by the mainstream media. He did it in front of the gathered House of Representatives, the members of the Senate and members of the administration and the American people. He gave Rush Limbaugh the coronation that he deserves and has deserved for 30 years in front of everybody, including his enemies, who had to sit there and watch it. And I can't tell you how satisfying that was to me. I can't tell you how moved I was by the look on Rush's face. I can't tell you how impressed I was by Donald Trump's decision to do it. And I thought it was just the best button on a really great week. But there were a couple of other things that he did, and I want to really
can I put a coda on that one though?
Sure.
For folks who don't realize it, the day before the State of the Union speech, Rush Limbaugh announced to his audience of millions across the country that he's been diagnosed with an advanced lung cancer, a stage 4 lung cancer, and is entering into treatment for that. And so the moment was propitious, but also I think the president had some idea that he should get it done quickly. Seizing on that at that time, though, was an extraordinary gesture.
It was an extraordinary gesture. Well, it was a very partisan gesture. You're damn right it was a partisan gesture, and it was the partisan gesture of a party that's been taking this insane, disgusting mudslinging for 3.5, 4 years now, and finally has a chance to emerge from all of this filth that's been unsubstantiated and basically inaccurate filth that's been leveled against not just Donald Trump. Look, all of the charges against Donald Trump, all of the efforts to impeach Donald Trump, all of the efforts for the Russian collusion, all of that is not directed at Donald Trump. It's directed at us. It's directed at the people who made a mistake by electing him. It's directed at the people who were given the correct candidate to vote for and decided to get up on their hind legs and defy the people who know better. And that's who all of this attack has been going on against for this whole time. And for Donald Trump to select a champion of the regular people in the middle of the face of these elitist partisan hacks is absolute justice. And to move on from Rush, you mentioned a couple others. I want to mention a couple others that you didn't mention. Maybe they're coming later. But look, when I said in 2012 that the next president's going to come from the pop culture, the reason I said that was because I had seen how well Obama had used what we call stagecraft, how well he had used emotion to make a point that he wanted to make. So what did Donald Trump do? Did he talk about bringing our troops home from Afghanistan? No. He showed you. He didn't tell you. This is the primary rule of script writing. It's the primary rule of storytelling. Don't tell, show. Absolutely rock bottom, foundational, absolute basis of any good storytelling. Don't tell, show. So he didn't talk about bringing troops home from Afghanistan. He showed it. He didn't talk about the future for minority Americans in this country, although I prefer the term Americans, as I'm sure most conservatives do. Instead of telling people about it, he showed a young boy who wants to be an astronaut, who's the grandson of a Tuskegee airman who had to fight the kind of prejudice that they had to fight, and who was himself an American hero. That's genius. It's genius. He introduced a person who by the definition of the Democrats was an unviable fetus, had no chance to live, therefore should have been aborted, could have been aborted, just a bunch of cells. Had that person stand up and wave. That is genius. And it's the kind of thing that we should have been doing from the beginning. And if we had been doing from the beginning, we never, ever, ever would have gotten into this trouble. To see a Republican do the kind of fundamental, to the heart, from the heart messaging that I saw in that State of the Union speech, was was just, let's just say after 17 years of talking about it, actually seeing it in all its power and glory was magnificent. And then to close with this, what do you call it? With this celebration of America and American exceptionalism, and to watch the people that claim to be a member of the American political body, the entire Democratic Party, sit there with sour faces and tear things up when he talked about how well this country's doing and how magnificent its past was. Genius. The entire reason that we've not been able to beat these people is because we have never, ever called them out for what they actually believe. We've allowed them to set the battle space. We've allowed them to define the terms. We've allowed them to do all of these things. And Donald Trump is enough of a patriot, and he's enough of a showman to understand that if you're going to fight against this kind of just sheer rank dishonesty, then it's time to bring out the big guns. He brought the big guns out, and I just don't remember being this happy about anything I've seen in American politics.
The people at the Patriot Post are fighting the good fight and bringing forward the ideas that have made this American republic great. We encourage you to visit the Patriot Post. We'll provide a link in the description below. They are America's News Digest, and we're glad to be in partnership with them. The biggest partners we've had and continue to have are the members at BillWhittle.com who make all this programming possible. They are contributing on a monthly or annual basis to fund this enterprise, and we're grateful to them. If you haven't joined them yet, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. You'll also see when you land on that homepage a picture of a gigantic boat, and you'll think, is that Bill Whittle's personal vehicle? Believe it or not, no. It's actually a vehicle
Rush Limbaugh's personal vehicle.
He's going to use for 3 days in May as we go on a Caribbean cruise to the Bahamas out of the port of Miami with a stop on, and I'm told I've been mispronouncing this, on Coco Key, which is a private island. We'll spend a day there. We'll stage live productions of our shows, including Bill Whittle Now and Right Angle. We'll do a lot of Q&A and a lot of casual conversation and laughter.
And a lot of celebrating
meals
too.
And drinks. It should be a lot of fun. If you haven't signed up for that yet, time's a wasting and you're about out of time. So go to BillWhittle.com and click on the picture of the big boat. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making this happen.